Hello everyone, my name is Barry O'Dowd, and as a member of the RDS Royal Dublin Society Committee of Enterprise, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the first in a new series of discussions with leading entrepreneurs and innovators who are breaking new ground in their sectors and redefining how we do business. Disruptors 2021 will showcase some of the world's fastest growing companies who are on the path to becoming the next generation of industry thought leaders. This series continues the historic work of the RDS and its commitment to sharing the latest ideas to shape the economic and cultural development of Ireland. Our goal with the series is to help Irish entrepreneurs to scale and succeed as they learn from the experience of others. Further details of the RDS Disruptors 2021 series are available on the RDS website, and links are included below. We are delighted to be working with IDA Ireland on this series, and I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our host for this series, Aimee Williams, Vice President, Content, Consumer and Business Services Division of IDA Ireland. Aimee is responsible for promoting Ireland as an investment location to some of the world's largest and most innovative companies. Her experience spans a diverse range of sectors, including technology, consumer products and services, life sciences, startups and clean technology across international territories. Over the coming series of interviews, Aimee will be speaking with some of the leading Irish and international disruptors who are transforming not only their own sectors, but the wider economy and society also. Today, we are delighted to welcome Adrienne Gormley, Chief Operating Officer at N26, as our first guest in this new series. In launching Disruptors 2021, I couldn't think of a more appropriate person to invite than Adrienne, and I would like to thank her for making time for us here today. Adrienne has over 20 years of experience working with some of the world's most innovative and game-changing technology companies, including Dropbox, Google, and Microsoft. And in her current role with the N26, she is helping transform the global banking industry. I am looking forward to what should be a fascinating discussion. So, without further delay, I will now hand you over to our host, Aimee Williams.
Thank you, Barry. Our guest today is Adrienne Gormley, Chief Operations Officer of fintech company N26, who have been described by McKinsey as one of the most successful digital disruptors out there, and more recently has been named on the Forbes World's Best Bank 2021 list. N26 has grown rapidly since its founding 6 years ago, today counting over 7 million customers across 25 countries, employing over 1,500 people, and has an impressive $3.5 billion valuation, making it one of the highest valued and most well-funded fintech companies globally. But perhaps of most interest today is that N26 has an Irish woman running the operations in her role as COO. As Barry mentioned, Adrienne has built a hugely successful career as a leader in fast-growing technology companies, including Dropbox and Google. Not perhaps where she thought her career journey would take her, having started out studying zoology at college, but not surprising, she has landed back in Germany, having spent the early part of her career working in translation in Bavaria, before moving back to Ireland to take up roles in multinational tech companies. Today, in her role at N26, Adrienne is responsible for scaling internal capabilities and building a culture of customer centricity and operational excellence across the organisation. Adrienne joins us to share her insights on scaling technology companies and the journey of N26 on becoming a global digital disruptor. Adrienne, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Aimee. Delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So we might get straight into it. So you've gone from this career in big tech across, Microsoft, Google, Dropbox, and now you've moved over to fintech. Really curious to kind of understand what fascinated you about this sector and what attracted you to N26.
Yes, I guess I have always been fascinated with disruption, and that came from, I suppose, very long time ago, my experience of moving I lived in Germany, as you mentioned, back to Ireland, and I was trying to get German books. And I couldn't find the German books anywhere through any book retailer in Ireland. And someone mentioned an online, if you had the World Wide Web and you had a dial-up modem, there was a bookshop called Amazon that you might be able to get these books at. So I think I'm probably one of the earliest European Amazon users, because I ordered my books and 3 days later, this pile of books was sitting on my kitchen table. And I was blown away by how this could transform how we bought as retail, but far beyond books, because my husband just rolled his eyes and said, it's only books. And I said, no, it's not only books. This has the power to transform many different ways in which we live. And so I think that's what also attracted me to working in tech and working for the kind of companies that I have worked for. And specifically fintech, I suppose, has been an area that I've had on the side, looking at it, thinking there's so much potential for disruption there. I'm not sure I ever thought I would be part of it, but when N26 reached out, I was already a customer. I've been banking for many years. I have been frustrated with banks as a retail customer for many years. I've been intimidated by banking for many years. So I loved N26's product, was using it, and decided, yes, it's worth having a conversation with. And when I saw the stage that N26 was at in terms of the growth, the way in which the product resonates with customers, and the ambition of the bank, it was a challenge that I just jumped at, if I'm honest.
So definitely an early disruptor yourself, or a user of new technologies through Amazon and N26. But I suppose that kind of segues us in nicely to maybe sharing with some of our listeners today what the story of N26 has been, and how, you know, it is one of the pioneers of, I guess, what has been termed kind of, whether it's digital banking, neo-banks, challenger banks, all these terms are branded out there. It'd be really fascinating, I think, to hear how that came about in the journey of N26, if you can share with us on that.
Yes, absolutely. So N26 was founded in 2015, so we're only 6 years old, by Valentin Stauf and Maximilian Theenthal, two Austrians, who believed that they could build a new bank, saving customers from the lack of transparency, the complexity, the lack of innovation, which they were very frustrated with. And they wanted to design a bank that did away with unnecessary fees, that was super transparent, that was built on trust, and that enabled people to manage their money, and enabled people to feel confident to manage their money. The first product that they launched was launched in cooperation with a partner bank, and that was necessary for the right infrastructure and regulatory framework. But then the founders quickly realized that the real way that they would be able to drive the business forward and innovate in the way that they wanted to was to apply for our own business, our own banking license. And that's exactly what they did when the company was still very small. They got the first banking license in 2016 from ECB. It's now regulated by BaFin, the German regulator. And I think the philosophy of building on trust was there from the very start, that our N26 bank, the deposits, etc., are guaranteed and as secure as any traditional bank. That was the basis on which we've been able to build. So it was an early, very big step to take, but has absolutely been a key foundation for our growth.
Yeah, it has been amazing growth, as you say, over kind of 6 years, building a customer base of 7 million, and kind of picking up on what you're saying there around trust. I mean, any business, to win new customers, you've got to get them to trust you. But take it forward, it's a whole new sector, it's a new way of banking. This is people's finances. I mean, how do they go about actually winning that trust from customers? Because it's a new company, it's a new market. I guess that's the fascinating thing. How do they do that?
Well, no, it's great. It's a great question. I think first of all, they had in mind an ease of use and a simplicity. It should be so simple for consumers and customers, like any other app, like the Netflix, like Spotify, except it's not, because it's a bank. Hence the importance of getting the banking license and making sure, we are regulated like any other bank, and we are subject to compliance and all of those things, which makes it a really interesting challenge to have a product that is simple to use, but yet has deep complexity behind the scenes. So I think customers started to use it and realized A, they could trust it, and B, it was actually very simple to use. The third thing that was pretty key for customers was the transparency of costs and the free banking that's also offered. So across a range of services, you can do basic retail tasks and activities for free. So you're not getting hit with charges, you're not seeing something deducted from your bank account. And that was hugely interesting to customers. Of course, we have our subscription models and so on, where the fees are laid out extremely transparently, and you know exactly what you get upfront for where there are fees or where there are charges. So that resonated extremely well with our customers. So I'd say they were some of the I suppose the things that got us customers in the early days, and the features and aspects of our product suite that continue to get us thousands of customers every day.
Because it does sound like that regulation piece is the key, because it almost could, back in the early days, it almost sounds too good to be true. It's simple to use, I can do my banking, it's free, having that knowledge that, well, actually then it's free, it's easy to use, but it's secure. The guys have got this regulation. So I imagine a huge amount of pure effort had to go into that, and the relationships of, because you've built a tech product, but you've thrown in it's in a regulated environment too, and that combination is, I'm sure was quite challenging at the beginning.
Absolutely, and continues to be very challenging. But I would put it as a positive challenge. One of the reasons that I was really interested in taking the role, and particularly because operations is that interface between how the product is received by customers, how the customers experience it, and then how are you building operations that comply with everything from a regulatory perspective, but then also delivering the best possible customer experience. I've worked in many tech companies, as you mentioned at the start, and I've loved the scaling, I've loved the sales piece, the operations piece, but what's interesting here is how do you do the tech in a regulated framework? How can we be ultimately thought partners with regulators in terms of where digital banking is going, digital financial services and fintech is going? It's a fascinating area.
Yeah, no, and it's probably a kind of a nice segue into kind of the next area. Kind of what I really want to focus on is understanding kind of that scaling piece. So you've gone from kind of an early stage growth company to a scaling company. So it's kind of startup to scale up. For any of kind of the leaders that might be listening today, kind of what are the things that they should be thinking of as they make that move to scale up, whether it's how they have to think about resourcing their teams or scaling product or technology, if you've any kind of insights in that. And I think from an N26 perspective, it's probably really interesting, because it's how do you do that when nobody else has done that? I mean, because that's the ultimate piece of being a disruptor, it doesn't exist there. So how do you go about scaling something that doesn't exist?
Well, so interesting, because it very quickly does exist. So I suppose when you launch a product and it has the kind of growth that N26 has, you very much suddenly have things that exist and that you need to put around it. And I think of scaling. So I think of scaling actually as a really good problem to have. If you've got scaling issues, then it's because you have growth issues. And if you've got growth issues, then your product is resonating with customers or your market or markets, right? And we operate in multiple markets. It all, for me, starts with the customer. So this growth means then that you have to look back into organization in terms of how you keep pace with the growth. And customers don't come in phases that suit you, right? Customers come every day. They sign up, and sometimes there's more sign up, sometimes there's less. Seasonality plays a role, whatever it is, in all kinds of businesses. What you always have to look for is what's resonating about the product, what needs to change, why is the growth happening, where are customers signing up and not doing anything, or where are they signing up and really using? So really making sure that your product continues to engage and resonate with new users, but also with existing customers and users as well. Behind that product, you've obviously got some technology when you started off, right, that built the products that the customers liked. But over time, you have to continue to look at that technology. As you scale, what are the areas around, data, hugely important for tech companies to be able to continue to refine their product. What are the infrastructures internally? What are the enterprise tools over time that need to be built? So there's a big technology piece. Then there's, I think about the overarching business operations. So legal, finance, customer service, operational pieces, in our case, banking, compliance, risk management, etc., that go around the technology, the product, and the customers. And then underneath all of that is talent, right? And the culture, the people. So when you were, Max and Valentine on day one with maybe 2 or 3 other people, that was one group. And as you scale, you realize, well, we're not lawyers or we're not bankers, and you need to add people with the right skill sets. Then you need to add people with the right level of experience, and so on. What's really interesting about scaling is it's not all wonderfully linear. And so I would say when you scale behind the growth, it's often there are inflection points, or it's often stepped at different points. You realize, okay, we now need to overhaul parts of our technology platform, or we now need to add new functions into our overall business operations, or we now need to add skill sets that we didn't need before, right? We never had enterprise management people, but now we need that. Or now we need to bring in more senior leadership because our team is much bigger, and we need those management and leadership skill sets. And I think one of the tricks, and if there was anyone could write a book with the magic formula, they would sit back for the rest of their lives. But the trick is really to know what needs to step change when. And so as entrepreneurs and as leaders of tech companies, it's also about looking at when do each of those, or aspects of each of those areas, need, I use the word upgrade, but it's also looking towards the future. When does it need to make a step change?
Yeah, but have you seen, is it very much, I suppose, unique to your company, what you do, or have you seen any commonalities across the different tech companies you've worked at would say, okay, when you get to 1,000 customers, or when we get to 50 people, this is when, is those inflection points you talk about, is there, I suppose, any common ground across companies that you could offer any insights on how people might think about that?
Yes, I think in many cases it's very company specific, right? And it's very industry even specific, I would say. For example, in N26, given the regulatory environment in which we operate, for us, it was very important to have our banking license early on. One could argue that that's a step that you would take later when you've got the growth, that you would then move away from a partner bank and apply for your own banking license. But for our part, we decided to do it early. I think in terms of people who drive everything else, I think there's definitely scales at which you know that you need to bring in stronger leaders, people with more experience in a leadership perspective. I think one of the things that happens often is startups have amazing people, and then they start to grow, and they give amazing people stretch roles, which we've all experienced and we've all learned and grown from. But you also need people from whom these great people can learn. And so bringing people in with expertise who can help can help the leadership or the skill set development is really important. And as soon as you start to go into, we're hiring 100 people a month, make sure you're hiring the leadership alongside that. If you're putting in, complex systems and so on, make sure you have the expertise for that. And I'd also say that again, depending on the company, I don't think it's driven by customer growth so much as how diverse does your product suite become, and what does that mean for your internal model, and in which case you may need to upgrade in different ways. So I've not seen really consistent, I suppose, commonalities across that growth, except maybe for the people side.
Yeah, and I think there's some really, valuable insights there, and that's quite common to what I would see with the companies coming in and setting up in Ireland, and how important it is to get that leadership team right from day one. Kind of, I suppose, on the subject of people, often with growth does bring growth, I suppose, across international hubs in different territories. And you're managing teams, I believe, across Berlin, Barcelona and Vienna. And I know, obviously, in your role in Dropbox, you had a wealth of experience of managing geo-dispersed teams. Have you any kind of thoughts on the benefits and challenges of managing kind of those geo-dispersed teams? We might start with the benefits.
Yes, well, I'm a big fan of managing diverse teams and geodiverse teams, and I think the benefits far outweigh the challenges. I think I love diversity across many angles, whether it's gender or ethnicity, geographical, personality, and so on. The list is endless. And I think with geodiversity, you just get people from different cultures, backgrounds, educations, and it broadens your mind. What I really like about diversity is it challenges me to think a little bit differently. I think we all hold our norms and our view of the world. And I like that to be challenged, because I think going back to my German days, I realized, there is slightly different ways of viewing the world, or there's slightly different ways in which people can form views and opinions. And so I think that's super helpful. With geolocations, depending on where they are, I always turned time zone issues into time zone leveraging. So I always thought we had a very extended working day if we were working across multiple time zones, that people were able to start something, overlap, and another team continue with it. So I always tried to frame it with my teams as not a problem that you only had so many hours of overlap, but actually that it was an opportunity that we could exploit as a global team, and we could work faster. So I think the other thing that is quite a lot of fun is you really get to see, for example, right now the Euros are on, who's supporting which teams, and it makes for a lot of fun in terms of national spirit, for example.
I'm not sure your HQ will be too happy today, though.
I know they're not at all, but we do have quite a lot of English people in the team, so
balance is
to be fair.
I mean, I do love it. I mean, I think definitely the diversity of thought from international teams is fantastic. Is there any challenges, though, that you do see? And I think it's fantastic that you try to take any negatives and spin them into positives, but are there challenges that, I suppose leaders of companies who are maybe managing other teams across the world should be thinking about, and how best to do that to overcome those challenges?
Absolutely. I think there's two things. One, when you're managing diverse or dispersed teams, one is you do need face-to-face time. And I would have spent quite a large proportion of my day on Zoom calls long before COVID. With one significant difference over the last 18 months, which was I got to see my teams in person on a pretty regular basis. And I think that face-to-face time is really important. That ability to just have casual conversations. A lot of us are more nervous of doing it over video because everybody's just tired of video. So the in-person face-to-face is really important. And I think the other key element of working with geo-dispersed team is having a different mindset to expectations on output, or outcomes. So really looking at goal-oriented or outcome-based performance management or expectation setting. You don't know, if your team is at their desks at 9 a.m. when people, and this also goes to working from home. And I think with many leaders, when they can see people in the room, then it's a sense of, I've got this, I know what's happening. And I think as companies grow and as leaders evolve, it's really about setting what is the goal here. And frankly, I don't care if my team or any one of my team works at 2 o'clock in the morning, if that's what suits them best. But for me, it's about the outcomes of the tasks and activities that they do.
Yeah, and I suppose kind of part of this comes down, I guess, to the culture and the tone that kind of culture is set at HQ. I know, I suppose, more on the US side, culture, the companies are obsessed with culture. I suspect the European tech companies are equally obsessed with culture. So, how does that come into it, both from a kind of geolocation teams? How do you ensure that the culture transfers whilst maybe at times allowing the other locations to build their own culture? And I know you did some things around that at Dropbox as well. It'd be interesting to get your perspectives on that.
Yeah, I think, culture exists in every organization, and whether you have created it purposely or not. And I think that's often something people don't realize. If you've not actively worked on what kind of culture that you want, you will have a culture, and maybe it works, but maybe it doesn't. And so I would say, first of all, is you have to be very considered and thoughtful about the culture that you want to build. I think having things like values and clear mission statements helps everybody understand what's important for the organization. But it's not enough to slap up a word like, I don't know, integrity or I won't name anybody's values, but you have to be able to live them behind the words. You have to explain, if it's a 1 word or 2 words, what does be kind mean in a work environment, for example. We'd all aspire to do that, but what does it mean, and how does it translate is really important. How do you build those kind of values into everything, all your people processes? So how do you interview for people who might role model those values? How do you train your leaders to show up in a way that role models the values? How do you measure performance of the teams and individuals against those values? So really embedding it in is extremely important. And then I think over time, and again, this is something I've observed in many companies, is culture evolves, right? And going back to the scaling, when you bring in lots of new people or you bring in different leaders and you move from being a one-room group of people startup to something the size of N26 to something the size of Google, culture cannot be exactly the same. So it's, what are the threads that you pull through each stage, and what are the things that need to evolve? So what does be kind mean when you're 5 people? What does be kind mean at 100 or 1,000 or 10,000? Being aware that whatever you had when you were 5, 10 or 100 people will change, and again, it will change organically if you don't get involved and be considered about how you would like it to evolve.
Yeah, no, that's actually, it's fascinating, and it was something I was wondering about, how the culture can evolve as the company scales. Just want to come back on the topic of diversity. Obviously you're really passionate about it. It's something I'm always curious about, I suppose, working with so many different technology companies. At what point when a company is scaling do they think about kind of diversity of their teams and maybe more specifically on the gender balance? So if I'm right, I noticed with N26, you're the only female on the executive leadership team. I've noticed with other companies, when I look at their exec leadership team, it's often the HR marketing person is female. Do you think that, leaders should be baking that in really early on? Or is it that they're too busy focused on growing and scaling that they get to a point and go, oh, now we got to backtrack?
No, great question. And I will say we also now have our chief people officer who's female, but to your point, so there's strength in numbers, so we're two. But your point is completely valid. I think there comes a point probably when in my experience, so I don't want to speak for everybody because I think it depends on the leaders, but I think when you start to bring in a recruitment function that many people, and I see this much more now than I did maybe in olden times, as my daughter would like to say, that recruiters come in asking those questions. So what way do you want this? Do you want a diverse slate? And so do you want a diverse group of people interviewing? Do you want to see equal numbers of male and female candidates for every role? And so I think that can help. When you're an entrepreneur, and I've huge respect for entrepreneurs, they're trying to think of so many things that this is where people can help guide and say, hey, this is something that you need to think about. Many, and in fact, I don't think I've ever met leaders or entrepreneurs who say, no, I don't want diversity. Of course they do, and many have it, actually. Sometimes they have it by accident, sometimes they have it on purpose. But then it needs to become part of recruiting processes. It needs to become part of, again, all the people processes, the performance management, how many people are getting promoted, how many are men, how many are women, what's the number of managers, male, female, as you go through the levels and so on. And that's something that we're very active in N26 and something I'm very passionate about in terms of recruiting for my team, and I also understand the banking world is quite male dominant. So I've uncovered that, although it was probably no surprise. But equally, when I've been dealing with recruitment, I've asked for the female candidates. I want to see. I'm not going to interview until I see female and male candidates. So. This might take a little longer, but that's what I want to do, and I'm looking for leaders. And I want a diverse panel, male, female, but also whether it's geography or any other dimension that I can get, I also want to make sure my panels have that as well.
No, it's fantastic, and I think people will take some good learnings from that. And I think it's just important to have the conversation around it because that keeps it
100%. 100%.
Just kind of maybe. Moving on just to what's next, I suppose in terms of, I guess a lot of the audience are kind of wondering what's next for N26, this established company. I've seen your founders talk about this North Star of, getting to the 100 million customers. Is it kind of new markets, new products, IPO, kind of what's the next piece of the story for N26?
I think it's continuing to focus on delivering the banking experience that our customers have grown to love. That is empowering them to take financial control of their lives, and giving them the security in terms of their finances, and also giving them the stability of, you can do things, we hope to drive confidence in the very basics of saving and so on. So that is really important to us, and we're never going to lose sight of that. In addition, it's looking at what are the other banking, the retail banking areas that customers would find helpful from N26. So exploring other kinds of products, and we've started to launch insurance, for example. We look at marketplace and the idea of bringing and partnering with companies that offer really good financial products in a very simple way, but doing it partnered with the N26 brand. And again, just allowing people to put a toe in the water of more financial products and services that might be of interest. And so continuing to expand our product portfolio, continuing to grow in the markets that we're already in. So there's still so much more to be done. The number of banking customers all over the world is extremely high, and there are very interesting stats on something like 40 billion unbanked, and I think that might just be EU. So there's still a lot of ground to cover, but never losing sight of that excellence, that trust, that transparency, and that ease of use and simplicity for our customers.
Yeah.
And focusing on that will get us, wherever it gets us in the future.
It's been a fascinating journey for N26 so far, so it sounds like there's only good things ahead. And this has just been brilliant. I actually could keep going on and asking you so many questions because you've just got so much knowledge and experience. But maybe just to wrap up, I'm going to give you some quick fire round questions, if that's okay. And this is more kind of focusing in on you, Adrienne. What tech company, whether disruptive or not, do you admire most?
I have to say Google, just for where they were, the time they came, and the breadth of which they've disrupted different industries, from digital advertising to search to accessing information to maps and so on, so much more.
Fantastic. Then what is the best leadership advice you have ever been given?
I would say it is that the team has the answers. You just have to ask the right questions.
Yeah, super. What tech leaders do you admire most?
I actually admire entrepreneurs, probably why I'm working for two right now. I think it is so difficult. It's something that I don't think I can do. I know where I can help, but I'm not an entrepreneur. And people who have started a business, taken a bet, and really tried to build success. I've worked for some amazing entrepreneurs, and so I couldn't pick one or two. I just think they risk an awful lot and they sacrifice an awful lot.
Yeah. And they've just such motivation and full of inspiration when you meet them. Is there kind of what I suppose would be the best advice you would give to kind of emerging or scaling tech company leader?
I would say focus on customers. Don't ever lose that focus. That's the reason that you have the success that you're having. And hire the best people you can as quickly as you can.
Yeah, super. And then last question. I know you're based between locations, but in your opinion, and I suppose I have to ask this in a way, but what makes Ireland a great location for tech companies to thrive and scale?
I wear the green jersey unashamedly. I just say Ireland some time ago, I think, has hit a tipping point in terms of talent, in terms of creativity. We now don't just have one generation, I suppose, but we've multiple generations of people who deeply understand technology, and whether they go off and found their own companies or they do what I'm doing and help other companies scale and grow. For me, it's a no-brainer. The other thing that I think Ireland has is talent that is what I call globally fluent. Really able to navigate North America, the multinationals from North America, but also companies across Europe. I think we're one of the very few nations that can do that with relative ease. And I think that's a huge USP for Ireland.
Yeah, super. Well, Adrienne, on behalf of the RDS and IDA Ireland, thank you so much for being with us today. Unbelievable wealth of knowledge. You have given us a really fascinating insight into the work of N26. It's a remarkable story so far, and it's been really great to hear its ambitions for the future. I wish you and your teams ongoing success as you continue to grow, and I think all that's left for me to do is go and open my own N26 account.
You can do it in 8 minutes, Aimee.
8 minutes,
and
okay.
if not, let me know. But thank you, RDS. Thank you, IDA. Aimee, thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you this morning.
Thank you to those watching. Please feel free to like and share this video to help extend to the reach of today's conversation. And to stay informed of additional events in this Disruptor series, please subscribe to the RDS and IDA social media channels. Thank you.